The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
I am Emily Swallow, also known as the Armorer on The Mandalorian. And I'm just giving a little shout out to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast because this is the way.
You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, episode 96.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas Senherho. I have been recently dubbed Ronin. I love it. It's so awesome. One of our listeners wrote in and said, you should all have nicknames. And he gave us all nicknames, and mine was Ronin. And I'm like, yes, that's so great. So you're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. But before we begin, we'd still love to hear from you guys with questions that you'd like to know about our panelists. We're coming up on our 100th episode, and we would love to hear from you. What do you want to know about us? What do you want to know about our Star Wars interests? What do you want to know about our other general nerdinesses? We all like talking about all sorts of really geeky things, so it's fantastic. Email us questions, or you can send some audio feedback that we could play on the show, and we would love to include that in that 100th episode that's coming up pretty quickly here. I also wanted to give you a heads up that next week we are going to be covering our Halloween special, which is the Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales movie. It's also available on Disney Plus, and if you'd like to keep up with us, that's our next step. So we're going to take a little detour from the Visions to go do our Halloween show, and then we're going to come back to Visions afterwards. So they're awesome. I know. I'm super excited about the next one, especially, but we're going to put it on pause for just a week and do our Halloween episode. But that brings us back to Visions. Today, we're going to be discussing the Visions episode, The Village Bride. And joining me on the panel is Angela Ciolana. Hi, Angela.
Hey there. Hey there. Yes, I am not the village bride. I am a bride, but I am here. So let's talk.
It's good. It's good to have you. A couple of news bits that I saw that are really cool this week. We were just talking before the show about the music from this episode, and they're releasing soundtracks for like a digital soundtrack for Star Wars Visions, which is fantastic. I think it's going to be great. You can rock out to Tatooine Rhapsody without having to listen to 10 hours of it on YouTube, right? But all the music's been so good from these episodes. Like, it's really a lot of good homage to the good old fashioned John Williams music, but then some really great pieces that set these Visions apart from the Star Wars universe in their own special way. And then the other one that I thought was really cool is Lucasfilm announced a new segment on their Star Wars Kids YouTube channel, and it's called Star Wars Galaxy of Creatures. So you get to go on a safari and explore the creatures of the galaxy of Star Wars, which is super awesome. Looking forward to sharing that one with my kids.
Yeah, that's tons of fun.
So those should be really good. All right, so on to the Visions episode. What were your initial impressions of this one?
Dude, so my initial impressions were like, wow, I was so blown away by how much they crammed into these 18 minutes of amazingness. This was an anime style that I feel like I'm most accustomed to because, you know, I'm not an aficionado of anime, but I felt like, you know, this one was a lot more familiar, and also the Star Wars storytelling that I felt like was, I guess, resonating the most with me, and the themes and the ways that the story was actually told. So certainly we'll be talking about that, but I was really blown away. I think it's probably my favorite so far.
I would be completely inclined to agree with you on that. This one just, they knocked it out of the park with this one. And like you said, how much they crammed into just 18 minutes. And it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel It didn't feel like anything was missing really, except that I want an entire movie, that's this style and this story. I want to see everything fleshed out. But yeah, I loved it. And then it was that really neat, every once in a while you get an anime that's really good about telling multiple stories at once. And as a viewer, you have a hard time focusing on any given story, and that's kind of the point. Like you just realize that everyone has a life in this anime, and even the secondary characters feel much more robust because of that. And so that was kind of the way this one approached the storytelling, and I loved that about it.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest and say that since I'm kind of filling in for Father Andrew, and this was more of a last minute fill in, I don't have a blow by blow. So I think let's just talk about the themes of this one, and there's more than enough that's going to carry us through kind of everything that was happening with the show.
Sure.
So I think to start off with, it's a very different style than any of the other ones that we've seen yet, and I love that it opened up traditional Star Wars, like 100% in the stars. With the pan down, a ship comes down to the planet, and even the music at the very beginning is traditional Star Wars music.
Yeah, it was the first 2 notes of the Force theme that got me, and it was in that brass setting that John Williams did so well. So I was totally I was expecting the next few notes to come, but it was nice to start with very familiar, and then it's like, nope, we're in this new thing. And so that was exciting too. But yeah, totally. That was the first thing that I wrote down was Starfield, ship, planet.
Right.
First 2 notes of the Force theme. I'm in.
It's the perfect Star Wars formula right there. And then it opens up to something completely new, right? So we get this guy who's, it almost looks like he's holding a lightsaber at first, and I love how they start off with that, and then they do that little subversive, nope, it just pops open and it's like a scanning tool. And then he's got this bucket on his head, so it's like, is this guy a droid? Is he a cyborg? What's going on? And then as things unfold, he takes the helmet off, and we see that it's just a guy with this really fancy exploration gear on. But it's really neat because it does kind of touch into that that Star Wars stuff. Here's all the familiar stuff, and now we're going to take it and just shift it a little bit off. And the pace that they do it in this show is so great, because we start there, and then these 2 characters who are very familiar, very sci-fi, turn around and look up the hill, and they see these other 2 characters who are in a very unfamiliar, not sci-fi type of relationship and situation.
Yeah. And, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about how we are new to this planet. We're new to these people. We're new to everything. And we start off with these 2 characters who are also kind of new in a way, that the situation is new for them. Like the explorer guy, as you described him, he's studying the planet. It's apparently new to him, right? And so he is studying this. And then the Padawan who comes in, she is new to this planet as well. She just flew in. We just flew in with her, right? And so it's kind of neat that we are starting this story kind of in their perspective. And then we look to, as you were saying, those folks who have always been here, have always been on this planet, and they have long roots and history on this planet. And so that was very Star Wars, to get those natives from the planet, all those good, usually it's like a creature or something, but here it was humanoids. And also starting off with that theme of exploring the planet in terms of the relationship with nature. That is very Star Wars and George Lucas as well. So that just really led into the next, themes that we got from those other 2 characters.
Right. And this is the village bride and the groom. And I thought it was interesting, like reading the subtitles, because I did like you were doing with this one. I watched the Japanese first, and it was funny watching the subtitles, because it only has the closed caption subtitles. So they were identifying the characters while they were talking in there. And so you got a little bit more information earlier than you necessarily should have, but it was kind of cool to have that too as you're going through and being able to pick up on things. But yeah, you get this image of this groom carrying his bride up this hill, and it seems almost cruel that he's having to carry her until they start the conversation with each other and they're talking about what they're doing, and you see this care, this real devotion between the two of them. She mentions that she would rather be walking, but he mentions that she can't have dirty feet for what they're about to go and do. And the music at this point is just absolutely gorgeous. It's this vocal, this choral backdrop music. And it reminded me of kind of where the Duel of the Fates went in the episodes 1, 2, and 3. Well, episode 1, Phantom Menace, because that was the first time we'd really heard choral music in Star Wars. And so it was really good here because it's, as opposed to being like really, really dramatic, it pulls us into this kind of intimate relationship. And it was such a great piece.
Yeah, and so I was totally blown away by that as well. And I was wondering, first of all, what language is that? Because it sounded like maybe Gaelic. Like, I have an Irish background. If you've been listening to the podcast long enough, you know that. And I was like, I don't know Gaelic, but let's go check it out. So I guess this wasn't in the credits, but I found out that the music was done by a guy named Kevin Penkin. And apparently a prolific composer for Japanese productions. And he actually had a woman by the name of Emmy Evans write the lyrics for this, which were in chaos language, so just gibberish. And she also sung that. And so the soundtrack was recorded in Sydney and Tokyo. Emmy Evans is half Japanese, by the way, and she's known for singing also in an RPG called Nier, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Nier. That was remastered, re-released this year, but it was released originally in 2010. So yes, amazing music. Credit to all those folks that that put it together. But again, it's bringing us into the world. It's world building. It's giving us this sense that not only is it kind of this mystical thing that they're going into, right? Because they're going up a mountain, which in storytelling, in the Bible and so many, mythical stories and language, you see a mountain as significant of going to a sacred place, going up to this mountaintop experience, we say a lot of times. And then you have the choral music, which, this beautiful, almost angelic sounding thing. And it's almost like, the sacredness of the moment. They said that they were going to a sacred place, but even if they didn't, I think we could kind of feel that just by the way that we were led into this next scene.
Right. And then the undertones of what they're saying are so haunting in that too, because they're talking about wishing that their parents could have been there, and that both of their sets of parents are gone. And then they start off with the memory thing, and that's the whole theme of this is memory, and they do such a beautiful job all the way through of painting what memory does to all of these characters. And they mentioned that between the two of them, between the groom and the bride, that the parents are there in this memory, and we start to get a name for the memory thing as they get to the top of the mountain and they start their ritual. And I thought that was just really the undertones are so good, and the foreshadowing, because you only have 18 minutes, so you got to really cram everything in, but it's so subdued and subtle, but also very deep as they're going through this whole thing. So it was really the dialogue was great, and there's so little of it too. I went back through and checked, and I was like, it really does. There's maybe only a third of the episode is dialogue, but everything that's spoken is so important all the way along. And
Absolutely.
I love that my 4-year-old picked up on the face paint too, because they get up to the top and he's like, they have white stuff all over them. Why do they have white stuff all over them? And we're like trying to explain to him, like ritualistic face paint and stuff. And my wife made the point that it's kind of like birds, right? Birds paint themselves to be attractive to their mates. And he's like, but they're not birds. So I think he understood by the end, but he was really upset by the fact that they had white stuff all over their face. It's like, it's okay, kid. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, it was interesting. There was kind of like this altar platform almost that he kind of sets her down on. And then I took note of them. What they actually said was, we are the sky, we are the forest, we are the river. And so there you get those elements of wind, earth, and water, right? Sky, forest, river. And then when they are speaking together, they say, we are one, Majina, may you rise. I couldn't find maybe where that word Majina came from. I'm sure there's many different influences for how they came up with that word. But yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times when we look at Star Wars storytelling, memory is very much a part of the legacy of Star Wars, but also this idea that wherever you go in the galaxy, that there are people who have a relationship with the Force in a different way, and they call it by a different name. And so that was kind of my interpretation, was that their relationship with the planet was so unique and strong that they called this Force thing that they understood as Majina. So that was kind of my interpretation of that.
Yeah, well, and I think they address that a couple of times in different ways through the episode, because right here we see this kind of blue emanation from them when they begin, when they say we are one, and the blue emanation comes out, and then the Padawan reacts to it, and she's very surprised that suddenly there is something happening. And later on, and we'll get to this later, I'm sure, but the bride sees her floating a rock using her Force powers and asks her very specifically, so you can sense the Majina too. And she is very diplomatic about the way she responds to her, not trying to say, well, it's actually this thing. She doesn't try to explain herself or anything. She agrees and kind of runs with what they're talking about. And I like the way that all of that's approached, because it's really, you get the sense that a good Jedi is not going to come in and like try and scold the locals for not understanding things, because there's no way that you couldn't have everybody be affected by this force that permeates everything, right?
Yeah. And I couldn't help but think about, as a Catholic, I couldn't help but think about like interreligious dialogue, which I've been a part of over the last, 15 years or so, when I started in college, like with that interest. And that is, something that you do, is like, there are a lot of similar experiences that we all have as human beings. And so to be able to start from that point is always important in order to kind of build bridges of understanding with people that have a different culture from you, have different, maybe, look or perspective on life, and on higher powers and beings and stuff. So yeah, I also thought about that too. One of the neat things that I liked about the planet's memories was that the memory that we started with was the two of them with, I think, Haru's sister.
Right.
And they're putting stones in the river. And later on, that will be brought up by the Padawan, now turned Jedi, right? That she talks about that. So I thought that was neat. But just this concept of being so close to the earth, and then we see the memory of the destruction, right? Of like the horizon just collapsing, and all of that kind of rubble and smoke sort of leading us back up to the bride and groom. So it was beautiful and tragic in a way, especially once you get to know the rest of the story.
Right. And then we see the perspective of the outsiders again, where it goes back to the Jedi and the Explorer, and he's telling her that there's a village nearby and that they should go. And you know that he's leading her around to try and get her to do something. Like even at this point, you already know that that's kind of what he's doing. Is he's trying to convince her that she needs to do something, and but she's along for the ride. She's not telling him, no, I'm out of here. You know, like she's not done with it yet. And is it at this point? No, it's when they're at the dinner that he mentions that there was someone else that came from here, right?
Actually, it was at this point.
It was at this point. Okay.
Yeah, because she says, is that what you wanted to show me? And he says, only because an old friend of ours had roots on this planet.
Right.
And that's when she has her first kind of like flashback.
Right. My master. And it's just really, and then we start to get a placement of where everything is. And so that's when they go back to the village and they're having the dinner. We start hearing the story of how lost my word. The Federation groups had stripped
the separatists yes.
had strip mined the planet and taken all the resources basically, and they so they were without, you know, so we get a context of time, you know, so that's something we've talked about with a couple of these other episodes is where does it fit in the timeline, and this one actually does have a very specific timeline, and it's related to, you know, how the Jedi fell at the end of the Clone Wars. And we see maybe a Padawan that escaped and what the effect on their life might have been. And, you know, so we're starting to build into the larger lore, which I think is really cool. Like having come in from Star Wars, you know, safe Star Wars opening scene, introduction to the local planet. We've veered away from what Star Wars is. So there's more than just Jedi who are Force users. And now we're coming back to, okay, but inside the Star Wars universe, this is still something that we have to deal with because it's affected everything. Like they say, you know, the war is lost. That's all it is.
Yeah, that was a beautiful line. And it gives us also a sense that this Padawan has been in hiding. You know, we kind of got that sense at the beginning where he tells her the Empire's eyes won't find you here. But we really understand that she's been through some kind of, you know, she's lost her master. And so she's wearing a mask, you know, she's got her hood on. She doesn't want anybody to know where she is. So she is in hiding. And I think that's important because later on, she won't be.
Right.
But one of the things I wanted to mention before we go on is that they actually, the bride and the groom, they come back to the village by way of passing through this place where they see the sunset. And that struck me as very important because for the Japanese, the sun is so important. If you look at the Japanese flag, it's literally a red sun.
Right.
And yes, there has been tons of controversy about the rising sun. That's a whole different flag, the rising sun flag of Japan, which stands for militarism. So I thought it was interesting that we saw a setting sun here. And instead of the rising sun, which stands for the conquering of the imperialism basically of Japan. So we were talking about this idea of the humility, the fragility of humankind, because the bride speaks about how the sun rises and sets long before we were born. It's been doing this, and long after we're gone, it will continue to do that. I thought it was interesting that the groom in response says, maybe that's what will happen, like long after we're gone.
Right.
And it almost makes you wonder, like, does he doubt the fact that they're going to be gone. The fact that the raiders have done so much destruction to the planet, the separatists have done so much destruction to the planet, that maybe just everything is ending. Maybe there's so much destruction that he can't possibly imagine that things will continue to go on as they always have been. That is there so much change, and very when we get to the wedding dinner scene, I'll just bring this up now because it's relevant. We find out that the bride's name is Haru, and Haru means spring. I've always thought, once I heard that, like a year ago or so, I learned that. I understood just how beautiful it was, but also its concept of renewal and a new beginning. And so I thought it was interesting that you have the bride be someone who is kind of representative of this new beginning, where she is trying to give her people a new chance, right? To have a new beginning. Whereas the groom seems like he doesn't know if there really can be a new beginning. So that's kind of all that was going in my mind with just this one scene.
Well, no, and it's a great scene because too, you also have there the thought that these are things that were constant, right? As a kid, you look at the mountains and it's like, these things they've been here forever. They'll be here long after you even as a kid, you understand that those things are going to outlive you. And that's not the case where they are. The mountains themselves have been stripped away. This planet has been completely ruined, where even what's left still looks like a beautiful paradise. But it's been stripped of everything that's usable by the people. And for a people that are so in touch with nature, that's just got to be so damaging. And just like, where do you go from there? How is it that somebody from somewhere else could come in and so completely ruin our planet and then just leave? And that was the sentient beings were doing that. It wasn't a force of nature. It wasn't like it wasn't a chaos or unexplainable or just providence or fate. It was someone did that purposefully, and for him to feel that, you get all of that kind of wrapped up in this package of who these characters are. And as we learn more about the Jedi too, you see that same thing where she's been betrayed by the people that she trusted the most, and knowing the context there is so important, because it's good we get these little cutscenes of her life, but we know what Order 66 did and what that would have been like for a Padawan, because we've seen the effects on other characters that we really like that lived through that event.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I think makes this episode one of my favorites, or my favorite, because of just the concept of how they're telling the story, right? That they're telling the story in these ways where they are showing more than they are telling.
Yeah, they have such a good understanding of how to compress this information so well. And it really is. It's so beautiful. And it's all imagery that's Star Wars imagery, right? Like the rising and setting sun, that's very much Star Wars imagery. It comes from the very first movie with Luke sitting there watching the twin suns set. And the foreshadowing that even that simple image has, because we don't know it yet, but as we find out in that series, he is a twin and there is another. And when you go back and watch them for the artistry that they had, because I think that's something that Lucas gets a lot of flack for being, kind of a 2-bit. It's sci-fi. You hear so many people say it's a kids movie, it's sci-fi, but there's so much great symbolism in it. And it's so dense that when you do go back with a really critical literary eye, there's a lot there to unpack that, you can say it's unintentional all you want, but Lucas knew what he was doing when he started. And as he went through and developed more, he would go back through, I'm sure, and watch his movies that he said and say, oh, well, this is a good thing for me to attach to this thing that came before. And it's just beautiful to watch that happen. And then to see somebody who really gets that and puts it into another format like this is so fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then so then we go through this wedding scene where we're seeing, well, this feast scene where we see that we get the story kind of told from this explorer's perspective. So it seems like maybe he's been here for a while. He's gotten to know the people. He's gotten involved in their lives and understands what's happening. And he's just trying to explain it to the Padawan who's with him. And it turns out that the separatists came in, they stripped the resources, and then they left. But they also left a bunch of droids. And these droids have become a force for the bandits, which is very classic Japanese theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of the warlords leave, but there's still warriors left, and those warriors become bandits because they're the ones with weapons, and they can demand things from the villagers who can't defend themselves. And that's exactly what's happened here. Is these bandits move in, they take the droids, reprogram them, and make an army of their own. They've come in, they've taken the rest of what these people had left to them, and they wanted to demand the leader as collateral, because they're going to take him, I guess, and just kind of keep exploiting these people to make sure that they didn't come after them or fight back. And instead, the granddaughter offers herself in place, and that's where we find out this whole setting is that she's being married because she wouldn't have a chance to do that since she's being sent off. And we get so much more depth to that relationship between her and the groom, that the two of them are doing this because they're childhood sweethearts. They want to make this official. And then he's even offered to go with her. He refuses to stay behind. So he's going to go with her as part of this sacrifice to these bandits. And all of this is just over sake, right? It's just over a drink. And it's so great because that's kind of that's another sort of theme that you get, is like the samurai goes to the local bar and he's drinking. And while he's drinking, he's just listening to the stories, and he's willing to turn that ear to hear the people and learn what they're saying and what they're about.
So Thomas, I have to ask you, in your consumption of anime and Japanese movies, is this like a common trope that the young person kind of offers themselves for in the place of their father or grandfather or something like that? Because I have very limited knowledge, so all I thought of was like, oh, Mulan, like Mulan went in her father's place, and
actually no. This is most of the time what you'll find is that the young person is stuck in a position where they have to care for the old person. And so you'll have someone sick at home. And I think, so we go back to the duel, right? That was a really great example of a typical parent-child relationship, that the child is forced, and which kind of works here too, right? They're forced to step into a responsibility that they were not prepared for, because they honor their elder and won't allow them to go through the humiliation or the suffering that would be theirs if the younger person didn't step in. And that's a very common trope in a lot of Eastern art. So you do have the Chinese and the Japanese both, but most of them, that because there is such a care for the older generation,
the Confucian ideal,
right?
The hierarchy of society,
exactly.
Right.
And so and I think that's something that I don't know about your experience, but in my experience personally is that that's something that we're coming to terms with in the West a lot too, because as people are getting older, we're finding that we can't just, put them in a nursing home or send them off to Sun City and, the over 50s community, and let them live out the rest of their life and they'll be fine, because that's really not the case anymore, because medical expenses are what they are, and because people are living longer, but they're also having more medical issues that they have to deal with. It's we're having to step into that role too now, where we're having to really take on responsibilities that maybe we weren't ready for. And we're used to our parents being able to provide for us, but now we're the ones that are becoming the providers and having to take care of their houses and make sure that we're watching out for them and for their medical issues. And I think it's good for us to start getting those messages in, because we need to be responsible for that generation. Not only raising our children, but also that generation that came before us, as they are living longer and finding that they need more help in that, that we can step into that role.
No, that's very true, actually. In the full-time work that I do in a Catholic apostolate, our Archbishop a few years ago asked us to start a conference for seniors to remind them of how valuable they are to society. And Pope Francis has really kind of led the way with a lot of that messaging of in his homilies and his messages, talking to the elderly, and also saying that if we want to create a culture where every person is valued, we have to value the elder generation and to listen to them and their wisdom. And that's definitely something that those who live in the quote unquote East, of this planet can really, I think, teach us a little bit more about here in the West.
I definitely agree with that. Yeah. And so, so I think to your point, about this, it does loosely fit that concept of stepping into a responsibility that maybe you're not ready for, and because you care about that person and you want them to be safe. And then also the village issue here, where she's doing this not just for her grandfather, but also for all of the people, because she feels a responsibility to them and the greater good that would come from her, an individual, sacrificing herself for their peace.
Yeah, so that was definitely like the big revelation at the dinner, and I really liked the concept of the sister Saku being just upset at the fact that her sister's wedding was almost like a funeral in a way, and that she was the sister who said, no, I want to fight. It reminded me of me and my sister. Like, I'm the one who's like, I'll take the blame or the responsibility or whatever. And my sister is like the spunky one, like, no, we're going to fight. So I related to that. But it was also kind of, I think, very Star Wars too, because it was this sense of like, do we give in to what is the established, the ruling powers, like what they want, just kind of to appease them, or do we start a rebellion?
Yeah, definitely. And that's I like the color imagery was really good too, because everybody you didn't notice until the sister took off her scarf and threw it on the ground, and all of her friends followed suit, that everybody at the party was wearing this like red scarf to denote the celebration. And just like, again, such a simple thing that you didn't give any credit to until that moment, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, everybody at the party does have one of those things on, and so that must be significant. And it just, we don't need to explain it any more than that. That was it. That said, this was a ceremonial thing. I'm throwing this on the ground because I'm upset and I'm leaving. And it was a great moment for her to do that. And then I love the turn of that, is that it goes kind of back to the Jedi and her explorer friend, and she's like, okay, I see what you're trying to get me to do here. And she's, you can see the resistance falling in her for it, right? Like she's understanding more what he's asking of her, and is becoming more accepting of it as well.
Right. And she's like, again, she's in hiding. Like she even just wonders like, oh, I don't know if it's right for me to be here, like in the first place. And so he's telling her like, no, like you've got to be part of this, because otherwise there's a curse. You've got to be the love, the giving has to be shared. That's kind of, how so many different villages, even today, like you have a wedding in Palestine. I know like everybody is, even if you're just visiting for a day, it's like, oh, you're going to be part of this.
Right.
We're going to party. So yeah, but she wants to, the Padawan wants to hide. And so then we're suddenly getting this tension of, in Joseph Campbell's, hero's journey, right? She's coming to this point, there's crossroads where she says, no, like, I'm not going to do this. This is not what I'm not going to take up the challenge. But, she has this wise sage, which is also part of Joseph Campbell's, and he's like, well, I don't really care about your little code, right? Why should I pretend to care? So it's almost like he's kind of passive aggressively saying like, oh, but you care, right? Mm-hmm. Like you do care about what's going to happen to these people. So that's why then we see her like almost meditating, I guess, like as she's with the Force, with that rock in the forest.
Yeah. And that's coming back to that scene where she's meditating and holding up this rock. And then the bride walks in, Haru walks in and says, oh, so you feel the memory too. And she just takes it in stride and turns to her and speaks that same terminology. She says, if you can feel it, then you know something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Right. And so she tries to figure out where Haru's standing, like where Haru is feeling all of this stuff and what she's feeling called to, but she's also feeling something herself, like she's feeling something is wrong and unsettled, and that she does have to do something, like she can't just be a bystander. But she would rather them do it if they can, because it's kind of their thing. And then Haru responds that she has to do this for the village, and then it's better for the village, and that she'll besides she won't be alone, she's going to have her husband with her. And that's how they end. They just like very quickly walk through. It's not even a long conversation, but it's enough to push the Padawan into that decision where she decides that she's not going to hide anymore, that she's done with the hiding. And some people might not know the significance of this, but I think it's really important to broach it. The hair braid is a Padawan feature. So if you don't know this, that's something that the Padawans have to wear. They have to wear that hair braid until they get to the point where they are going to become a Jedi and they've passed their test to become a full-fledged Jedi. And that scene where she cuts the braid away and also drops the mask is so powerful, because it's her. At first I thought it was going to be her refusing to be a Jedi, right? And giving up the Jedi. But then we get the next scene where she says that she is a Jedi and embraces fully both those things. And so it's like she's accepting who she is, and that the trial that she's gone through is enough for her to be able to claim that title. And the second watch through, that was just, it gave me chills watching her do that and drop the mask and then cut the braid. It was so awesome. So powerful.
Yeah. Gosh, so many thoughts. So real quick, in the forest again, for her to be in the forest is actually symbolically very important, because Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung also, they created this basically catalog of like all the different mythos from across the world. And one of the things that is apparently very consistent is that when a character's in a forest, it is like they are tapping into their subconscious. And so we get this, meditating in the forest is very important. When you think about Star Wars, you think about Luke training on Dagobah with all these trees, and his big trial is like in this tree, right? And so that's where he faces himself and his greatest fears, right? And we see that with this Padawan, that she also has this another vision of losing her master,
right?
And almost like maybe it's the death of her master or something. And so that is when we see that happen. As you said, she cuts off the braid and she drops her mask. And so it's like she has confronted maybe the fears that she had from losing her master, that wanting to hide, so she's lost the mask. We've talked about masks so much, I feel like, in these last few episodes. So yeah, it's like this turning point for her. And, going into the next scene, just the sense of, again, remembering, right? Like that whole memory concept where, if you think about the role of memory in our lives, it's like, it's not just about something that happened that you kind of recall, right? But even in our Catholic theology, there's this idea of entering into a moment that, yes, has happened in the past, but it is also present again, mysteriously, to us now. And this idea that memory can be transformative, right? That we can enter into memories not only as like, oh yeah, that was nice, or that was bad, or whatever, but this concept of allowing memory to transform us so that we, with our will, we make a choice, right? To have power over our, our trajectory, right? I guess you could say our story, right?
Yeah. It's that difference between something being fated and embracing our destiny, right? And those are two different statements. Like embracing your destiny is kind of is more about who you are, and embracing who you are in the moment that you find yourself in. And something being fated is more about, I don't have any control over this. It's just, I have to follow a path because it's what's set in front of me. And those two things are very different. And you see in this character that she realizes in this moment that what she is, everything that's built up to where she is now, doesn't remove her from responsibility for doing something, but actually moves her to be responsible to do something. And it's such a dramatic change in who she is. And, the mask is obviously like, it's metaphoric, right? Because it's covering who she is, it's hiding who she is. And now she's taking it off and becoming who she really is. And the sage character that she has is so cool because he wears this bucket on his head, right? At the very beginning, like he's got a bucket on his head, literally covering his entire face, and talks to her most intimately when the mask is off. And it's such a great, like everything just builds so well through this moment. And then, we step into the next day and we see that everything's in place the way it's supposed to be. The bride and groom are being brought out to the bandits who have come down with their army. And this, interestingly, this is the first quote unquote alien that we see in this episode. Yeah. So everybody else has been some version of human up to this point, and we see two aliens get off. One's this kind of Cyclops character, and the other's a Twi'lek. And that's it for the whole episode, unless you want to call the bandit leader also an alien figure too, which is possible. And that's it. Those are the only alien characters that we get.
There might have been one at the dinner, I think.
Oh, you're right. There may have been one. There may have been like a fuzzy looking guy. I think you're right. Kind of like a hedgehog looking guy or something.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I want to say, but it was very limited,
right,
in this.
Yeah, it was a community of people, and they were being kind of taken from the outside by these bandits who had taken advantage of what the Separatists had left on the planet. And it's your typical hostage turnover situation, and obviously the bad guy's going to throw a twist in there, and it is that he finds we missed the scene. I missed talking about the scene where it's Haru and the groom, and they're sitting there, and they are in front of a table, and he picks up a blade. And did you notice that on that table there was a thermal detonator as well?
No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so the thermal detonator was on that table in front of them when he picks up the blade and he puts it back down. There is that same thermal detonator that ends up in this scene was there, and so I wonder almost if he was trying to keep them from being able to go as well. And there's a look that passes between them at this moment too.
Right.
So again,
that was like,
so many
as a
details.
married person, even in animation, it's like, I know that look. That's the look where it's like, honey, you're not going to do that, right? Because we said we weren't going to do that, right?
Yes.
And he's like, no, we're not. I'm with you.
Yeah.
But like as a husband, he wanted to think about, is there a possibility?
Mm-hmm.
Like, could I keep this from happening?
Right.
So yeah, I found that very relatable. I just loved that little scene.
Oh, it was great. It was really like it made perfect sense. You're right. As a married person, I've been there. I've been on the other end of that look as well, where it's like, no, you're right. This is the way we're gonna do it. And then there's other times where I've been on the other side of that look and go, no, I'm gonna do it this way because this is the way that I feel like is the best way right now. So
yes.
And that's, I think both of those are definitely kind of the situation that you find yourself in as a married couple. You do disagree, and you make the best of the situation for the other person that you can. And that's I think really the important part here, is that you don't get the sense that he's trying to weasel out of it for himself, because he could very easily just say, I'm not going with you. I have no reason to go with you. But what he wants to do is keep her safe, and not just in a jealous sense, but in a she doesn't belong with them. He wants to keep her safe. And so he agrees with her sister that they need to fight back. And we see that all goes south, unfortunately. And the sister is brought out, and the thermal detonators passed over to the leader of the bandits. And the leader decides that this is the problem. And so he pulls out his gun pulls out his pistol in order to shoot her. And everything happens really fast, and we get that blinding flash of light and that moment where we don't know what really happened. And then the Padawan appears, mask off, hand out, stops the bolt. Everything's frozen in time. And that's so awesome. It's such an awesome moment.
Yeah. Okay. So when she says, I am Jedi, right? So I first watched this in Japanese, as you said. And so she says, Watashi wa Jedi. For me, that was like, wow, because so when I was like a teenager and I listened to Christian rock music, there was this album called Watashi wa. And it wasn't Japanese language, but it was the idea of I am who am, from the name of God. And so the idea of, her saying those words was like hit me a little bit more, this idea of like, I am Jedi. Just the claiming of the identity in those words was very special to me. But then also it reminded me so much of the stories of, Éomer in Lord of the Rings, where she says, I am
no man.
No man.
Yes.
Right. And so, it was very similar to that. And there's been other, situations with that as well. Ahsoka saying, I am no Jedi. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Yeah. I loved this moment because it was so, it told you the story of this character so fully, and it was done in that just great, like, pan and zoom in style, where it's kind of distant shot and then pushed really close up to the character so that they can get their word in. And she says that, and then, she throws the bolt back at the bandit leader and then walks past them and gives Haru the statement that you were saying about the stones in the river. And it's so poetic and also so fitting, because it's an acknowledgement of the memory that she's seen, that she knows what they were responding to and where they were in their marriage and in what has found them at the place. But then she just lets them know, I know you, like I know who you are, and I'm not here to take anything from you in this moment, but I do have a responsibility right now.
Yeah. And I think also too, it spoke to me of where she had come in her meditation, because I actually wrote it down. So she says, you can't change the river's flow by casting a stone, but live in harmony with nature and you'll change together. So it was almost like, if you can't change the way that things are happening just by putting in one rock, right? So this idea of how she was trying to just kind of hide away and just sort of like, I don't know, I hope we learn more about this character, right? Because I really want to know what her life was like and what she was up to. But I get the sense that, you know, she realized that you have to be one with the Force, and the Force would not want the continuous destruction of this planet, of these people, of the resources, that the Force would ultimately will for the good of the people and the planet. And so she, being a Jedi, realized that in order to be one with the will of the Force, that she had to not just cast a stone, but to live in harmony with nature. And she says, and you'll change together. So she ended up changing who she ultimately saw herself as a true Jedi Knight by making this choice. Right. So that was really beautiful. And also just this concept of the people of this world know that well. She says, you know that the breath of life becomes wind and will always respond. I felt like perhaps in the Japanese, it would have been, that particular phrase would have been a little bit more meaningful. So if any of you do speak Japanese and you know what the original, you know, maybe the nuances of that. But this idea that, you know, whatever we do, our breath, that it becomes part of the wind. It ultimately, everything that we say, every breath that we take, you know, no police puns, you know, but this idea that we make, whatever we do makes a difference, and that it will come back to us, right? This concept of, you know, chi, and the concept of, I think, karma that, you know, the Eastern philosophies have, right? I think that was kind of what that was trying to express. But I think in our Christian understanding, just the idea that we are part of this world, and that we are all members of, right, this corporate body of humanity that is created in God's image. And so whatever we say or do, like, is either going to give glory to God and to be the image of God in this world, or not. And ultimately that's going to affect us because we are part of this. We are, you know, we're one body in Christ. We are, you know, even, you know, in the gospel, Jesus says the judgment of nations, right? The nations will be, you know, lamb or goats. And so there's a corporate understanding of what we do and our responsibility, right? Ultimately. So that was just kind of like a little reflection on that, but it was poetic. It was very meaningful. And I love that they put that in there, because it is so like Japanese, but it is also so Star Wars and just so like spiritual, like the Force, you know, something a Jedi would say. I thought it was just perfect.
And I love that she attaches the two kind of mantras, right? So she attaches the awaken Majina and also may the Force be with you. And she puts those two together because they are that equal significance to her at this point. She understands that like I don't think there's anything in her that would have said that she understood the Force better than these people, but I think that she sees the value of both of those things, where maybe before she was trying to distance herself from them. Now she's fully embracing them because she's seen what it can do and how a person can follow the wrong path while trying to do the right thing. and she's seeing that and like putting both. Just this whole scene was so great. It was so good. And then she kind of pauses there, and everything stops for a moment. And the bandit leader says, to his men, why are you just standing there? Get them. And they all raise their guns to start firing. And then a green blaster bolt comes in from somewhere off in the distance and knocks one of the droids' heads off. And then a few more. And the droids live up to their droidiness 100% during this scene.
Roger, roger.
Roger, roger. And all of them turn around and miss, like just firing it, all of the bolts firing up at the at the hill, and none of them can hit the guy. And so we get this great, like, deep, awesome, poetic moment, and then the comedy kind of comes in to push us sideways a little bit. And even in that, though, the explorer, he seems very intent, and he it's very anime thing, like, right, he's got this secret weapon, then he pulls the helmet off, and we're wondering what he's doing. He throws it down in the middle of the droids, and they're all staring at it, trying to figure out what it's going to do. And then it flies off into the ship and blows the whole thing up. And it was great. That was all of that was just really, 100%. And my kids pointed out, though, they were really excited that he got a new helmet back at the end of the episode.
Oh, yes.
Because they were like, oh, look, he got a new one. And I had not even had not even crossed my mind that the first one probably was destroyed in the explosion.
Yeah, it was more of like a hat, though, like at the end. Like, I don't know, to me it was almost like through this whole thing he had kind of been like the droid character that we really didn't get very much of. We got, a couple of droids, like server droids in the wedding feast, and there was a out of commission probe droid that was passed by on the way up the mountain. But yeah, it was almost like he was sort of like the companion droid character, right, but also the wise wizard character at the same time. So that was neat. But he lost that sort of like sidekick explorer, not really part of this planet, like identity, almost, by like getting rid of that helmet. And then at the end we sort of see him as like he really is like part of the crowd, like right, he's there, that's where he belongs. So that was kind of neat too.
Yeah, he's fully embraced the people and become a part of their culture. So, yeah. And then we get, this is a huge statement, but it is absolutely true. This is my absolute favorite lightsaber ever.
Wow.
I love the thin bladed lightsabers. I love the thin bladed katana lightsabers, but this one was next level, because when she clicks it on, the tsuba pops up, the little handguard thing, and rather than being like a goofy Kylo Ren kind of stuff shooting out the sides or anything like that, it's just this like disc inside of the lightsaber before the whole thing lights up, and I just about lost it. That was so awesome. That was such an awesome lightsaber.
It was, definitely.
And
it was amazing.
Yeah. And so the bandit leader takes Haru prisoner because he's going to escape with her, and we get the awesome lightsaber light up scene, and then the standoff, which is probably one of my favorite Japanese film moments, where there's the two, the high noon. We get it in the spaghetti westerns. You get it as the high noon. They're standing there with their guns at the ready, and we know who's going to win, obviously, because it's a Jedi and a non-Jedi. So it's not like there's really, but there's still that moment of like, well, I don't know, she's really far away from him. What exactly is she going to do with a lightsaber? Yep. And then her shoes click open. You're like, oh boy.
I was like, wait, okay, how does this work? Are they boosters? Like, what are we going to see? But actually the genius of it is that we don't see.
Right, exactly. We're left to make it up on our own. And that was so brilliant, because it's like, we don't need to know. You don't need to know what happened here. It's just, she has awesome shoes. Just trust us.
Yeah. And so we see her, like, she passes him so much, like the force of what she actually does, whatever she does, she extends like way past him, and then you see his limb has been severed, which of course,
very Star Wars.
It's Star Wars.
What would Star Wars be without a severed limb?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was really amazing. That's why, I mean, I want to know so much more about this character.
Right.
Like, where did she get that lightsaber? How does it work? What's the kyber crystal like? What's the story? Let's go.
Well, and not even that, just don't stop here. Like, this is the beginning of an incredible tale of who this person, like, why does she leave the planet at this point? You know, she's got something else that she needs to do. And that's the only reason that she gets on a ship and heads off. So what is it that she's going to do? I really want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the closing scenes are all great, where it's like this kind of like, you know, celebration throne of the people, and they're reclaiming who they are. So it's that the Ewoks playing music and
yes,
you know, kind of closing scene, and it's really yeah. and it's so great. Like it really does. It gives you all of the closure you need for the episode, which again, 18 minutes, very cram packed, full of awesomeness, and didn't feel like it was rushed at all.
No, I felt like I got to take my time learning about the characters. I mean, there's so much more that you want to know, but you get to understand their relationship with each other, their relationship with the planet, the mythos, the spirituality of the people, the, you know, the backstory of the Padawan. I mean, gosh, you know, so much that is packed in. And, you know, there wasn't like a whole lot of humor, I guess you could say, in this episode. There was like tiny little moments, like, I guess with the explorer guy kind of making these little quips here and there. But it wasn't really like, haha, laugh out loud moments, which I feel like that's okay because of the different tone that this particular episode set. It was, I think, much more spiritual than the other ones have been.
I would agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And not that you can't be spiritual and laugh and have humor, but there was definitely like a sacredness, I think, that this episode tried to respect.
It was very quiet and in a good way, like in a really good calm before the storm. And then the scene at the end, like even with that, it feels like a fully fleshed out fight. It doesn't feel like it was really like it happened as fast as it needed to happen, and it didn't. You know, these guys, they had battle droids. It didn't mean that they were professionals. It just meant that they were able to reprogram the battle droids, right? And so you know they're gonna lose once they go up against a Jedi, but seeing it play out is good, and seeing that you know, the Explorer guys involved with it. And we keep referring to them as this because we didn't get names for either of the main two characters, which is like,
until the credits.
I want more of this Jedi.
And then I was like, what does this mean? Her name is F?
Right?
I don't understand.
So, yeah. So, you know, Disney, find these guys, get them involved, and make an entire run of who this character is, because it's awesome. This is, and that's, I think, the great part about it. And I feel like it added to Star Wars lore in a positive way, too, because it takes that concept of local, untrained Force users and shows you that, you know, maybe it's not so much that they were Jedi that had just been looked over or anything like that, but they had a very specific use of the Force. It wasn't that they could use the Force for just anything, but they had this ritualistic way of engaging with it. Maybe there was some sort of a node that could have been a Jedi temple on this planet, but they used it in such a particular way that the Jedi were like, okay, nope, we're not going to mess with that because that's their thing and that's their culture, and we're just going to leave them to do that.
Yeah. So I think the only thing that we didn't touch on in my notes was we did get, I have a bad feeling about this, but it was within that, again, that very like almost sacred conversation. And so it wasn't that haha moment. It was more of like, wow, that's probably the most serious that I have a bad feeling about this actually has been delivered in all of Star Wars. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, no, that was and that was one that I was waiting for, because I think a lot of these have done I have a bad feeling about this throwback, which is awesome. But yeah, you're right. That it wasn't a humorous moment in this one, the way it has been in some of the others. So that's good. Anything else that you wanted to bring up about this one?
There's just read the credits, and there's some folks that did voice work in this episode on the English track that have been part of Star Wars Resistance, the Clone Wars. So Matthew Wood came back as the droids, and so we got that. So we always try to give a shout out to those folks, and they did a great job as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I thought it was, I love both treatments of it too. And it's one of those things where you find a lot of times in anime, the Japanese is in a lot of ways superior because the characters that you get are different than the characters that you get in the English. And in this one, you get a more somber tone from the Padawan, and I liked that. I liked the somber tone that came through because she just sounds curt in English, whereas in the Japanese she just sounds like she's broody and
contemplative,
right?
Yeah,
and it works better in the Japanese. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just hearing a foreign language to hear that. But that's kind of what it felt like to me. She's just like, yeah, I see what you're trying to do. Just you get a lot of that. See what you're trying to do. See what you're trying to do. All right.
Yeah, but it was great. I really enjoyed this, and we were talking before the show saying that the next episode is apparently audience rated even higher than this one.
Yes.
So
yeah, the Ninth Jedi is apparently it's the highest rated out of all of them, and like this one didn't do poorly among the list, but it's midway for them. We talked when we talked about the Tatooine Rhapsody that it scored the lowest out of all of them. So this one got a 7.6, I think, in the audience rating. Out of the highest one is 8.7. So I'm looking forward to the next one with trepidation, because I always, audience, they failed me on the Tatooine Rhapsody because I really loved that one. I thought that one was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of wondering if, like, I don't know, did they just like it because it's like cool? I don't know, but we shall see. Yeah, my kids really like the art style in this one too. They really liked the way this one was put together, and so they're going. I think one of the fun things about this is that they're now learning the names of some anime production companies that they are going to go and look up, and a lot of them, I'll be honest, I don't know, because I am an anime consumer, but I am, from my childhood, and I just, since I've had kids, I haven't been able to as much. So I don't know the names of some of these studios. And so it's good to kind of learn them and be brought up to speed on them myself.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it from us. Listeners, what did you think of The Village Bride? Please let us know. We'd love to hear your take on it. Be sure to email us or comment on our Facebook or Twitter page, and you can email us feedback at starwars@sqpn.com, or you can find StarQuest on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on Twitter @SQPN. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Wars, this week including John S., Jesse S., Ann T., Caleb P., and Michael M. Fiat. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Just a reminder also, you can get your own official Secrets of Star Wars t-shirt or coffee mugs or stickers or magnets that encapsulates our philosophy of finding hope in a galaxy far, far away. They're available in various sizes and styles, and you can get them at sqpn.com/merch. We have a new way to join the StarQuest fan club and the mailing list. You can text StarQuest to 66866. Every time I say that number, text StarQuest, all one word, to 66866, and just a reminder to be sure to share the show and on Twitter, Facebook, and leave us a review. That's the best way for us to know how you're feeling about how we're doing, and it also helps get us up to the top of that list. Be sure to subscribe to anywhere that you can. And if you want to find any of the previous Secrets of Star Wars episodes, you can visit sqpn.com/Star Wars. And once again, just a reminder that next week we are going to be doing our Halloween special covering the Lego Star Wars Terrifying Tales movie. So if you're watching like us, if you're holding off on watching these Visions episodes until the week before we do them, then we are not covering the next one yet. So until next time, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Wars, Angela.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
You're getting better at that every time. I need to learn the response to it. I used to know it, and it's totally gone from my mind at this point. And once again, I'm Thomas Senherho. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.